Welcome to the Cohn and Krueger Show, the #1 Bay Area sports talk show at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon. I'm Grant Cohn. That's Larry. If you don't already, subscribe to Larry's YouTube channel. It's new, and he's putting out a ton of great content every day. What's up, Larry? How you doing?
What's up, Grant? How are you, man? Happy Wednesday. Let's get this going. Last week was explosive, man. Let's do it again.
I want to talk about the owners' meetings a lot because it's the news. I wasn't there. I would have liked. I'm going to go next year. Freaking Miami. It seems like a lot of fun, although it does seem like a lot of work. But here's the thing: the #1 piece of news coming out of the owners' meetings is that the Niners are okay with keeping Jimmy Garoppolo all year. I'm looking at their website right now, and the headline on their website, 49ers.com, is Jimmy Garoppolo and SF in 2022. 49ers are, quote, all right with that. My question to you is, are they bluffing? Tell me they're bluffing.
I don't think they're bluffing. I think this has gone from, you know what, we're going to work together and get this done, to once Jimmy had the surgery on the shoulder and maybe a little late. Now suddenly it's like, hey, Jimmy's going to do what's best for Jimmy. Guess what? We're going to do what's best for us. And what's best for us is to, drive this thing right to training camp, because I think day one training camp is when they want that money off the books for the extensions for Bosa and Debo. And I don't think they're motivated to do anything before then, because they've got the luxury of two quarterbacks, two guys they feel like they can theoretically win games with. Who knows? What if Trey Lance suddenly tore something in these off-season workouts? Now at least you got an NFL starting quarterback and your season's not down the tubes because you cut him loose for convenience sake. So I get what they're doing, but it's clearly, I think the kind of the feeling of we're going to work together has been replaced with where everybody's doing what's best for themselves.
Absolutely. And look, I think the Niners are bitter that Jimmy Garoppolo had this surgery without letting them know, kind of blindsided them with it. And now, so I have to say, maybe I'm cynical, but I agree with you. They are not bluffing at all. What they're hoping for, and they said it, Kyle said it, yeah, we'd love to trade Jimmy, but I don't think they really expect to. What's the trade market for Jimmy now? Carolina, and that's it?
Right.
Okay. So
unless you can picture something that I can't picture.
Yeah. So
New York Giants. I mean, is there any chance that is Baker Mayfield really going to go to camp in Cleveland as the #2 guy? I could see him holding out. See him holding out. Would you flip Jimmy for Baker in the summer if, because let's be honest, Cleveland, Deshaun's going to get suspended. They're going to have some quarterback. So if Baker doesn't play, do they flip Baker for Jimmy in the summer? And now they at least have a quarterback for the first half of their year, and the Niners get a little bit of cap relief while still maintaining some flexibility. And we don't know how the Niners feel about Baker. They may like him.
I think it would be a mixed statement. I think the Niners want to say that they're all in with Trey Lance eventually. I don't think that's going to happen. It's possible it could happen, but I'm saying the most likely thing is that Jimmy doesn't get traded, and that the Niners are going to have to make a decision. Do we cut him or do we keep him? And I don't think they have the guts to cut him. I think it's the right thing to do for themselves, but I think what they're doing is like, oh, Jimmy wants us to cut him. Jimmy wants to pick his own destination, so we're not going to cut him. And I think it's more important for the Niners to get something for Jimmy Garoppolo so they can say they didn't lose on this, than it is to use this cap. I think they've made that pretty freaking clear. Jed York came out this week and said, oh, yeah, we could keep him another year. So I think the way they see it is they keep him another year, they get a 3rd-round comp pick minimum, and they can say, it's okay. That's a good return for Jimmy Garoppolo. And they give themselves this chance to shoot the moon and get something for Jimmy Garoppolo if someone goes down to training camp.
You know what? I think you pegged that. You know why, Grant? Because think about the other scenario. The other scenario is they cut him right before camp, and then they risk turning off all the veterans in their locker room who were pro Jimmy, who are going to look at that as an aggressive move, an aggressive anti-Jimmy move if they do that. So, yeah, I think that's going to be interesting to see. How do the veterans in that room react if the 49ers just cut him one day before camp? And suddenly now, they're going to use because that's their timeline for giving money to Debo and Bosa. I think you're right. I think if they get that far, I could see another year with Jimmy on this roster. But that's awkward, isn't it? Because last year they competed.
It's a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea. But I think what's happening here is no one wants to take the loss here. If you cut Jimmy Garoppolo, someone has to fall on their sword and be like, you know what? Didn't work out. We're going to do what's best for the organization, cut our losses, and move on. But the Niners have been pretty clear. They're not willing to say that. The number one goal for them this year is to get something for Jimmy Garoppolo. Super Bowl secondary. Anything else is secondary. They look at themselves as a good competitive team, but the number one freaking goal is to get something good for Jimmy. And clearly they see, well, we can get a third comp, like a comp third minimum. So why should we cut him? Why would we? I mean, really? They're going to pay $27 million for a third round comp pick. I really believe that. I do.
Yeah.
They're going to.
I think it is more about winning the trade too.
Yes.
I think maybe if this were year one of Lynch and he had greater latitude and a little bit more, grace period, maybe he would cut him loose. But right now, I think every one of his picks, every one of his maneuvers is being examined under a microscope. I think he knows it. And so he wants to make the best deal for himself as the general manager as well. So I think that plays into it.
I think he's also sensitive to the fact that everyone kind of saw it as Don Yee getting over the Niners. Everyone was talking about it. Oh, he waited on that. It was clever. He waited on that surgery. Now the Niners have to cut him because they got to use this cap space, and Jimmy's going to pick his own destination. I think the Niners were like, no, I'm not going to let Jimmy win this. I mean, there's so many competitions, and I got to come back to John Lynch. He's not a businessman. He is a competitor. He's a Hall of Fame competitor, and he refuses to lose on this Jimmy Garoppolo issue when it's so secondary. Take the loss, cut your losses, move on. It's in the best interest of the organization. But to me, John Lynch is so laser focused on winning these things.
Well, and I also think there's this is a very aggressive market. If he cuts him today, he could wind up, in Seattle twice on your schedule next year. And I don't know how he feels about that. Now, does he care about that? Does he not care about that? You know what I mean? There's two ways to look at that. Obviously you're moving on from him, so you feel like Trey's the better quarterback, but then do you want him to be in the division? Most teams, prefer their ex-players to be somewhere else, it seems. That because that's where he could be headed on paper, right? Drew Lock, Jimmy Garoppolo, True. That works.
Let's be honest, though. The Niners, like John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, have a ton of job security right now. The one thing that could put them on the hot seat is getting rid of Jimmy, committing to Trey Lance, and him not being that good. That'll do it right there, right?
So especially if Jimmy went to Seattle and kicked your butt.
Exactly. Yeah, and he's winning, you're not. He's in your division. I mean, that really would be bad.
You picked the wrong young quarterback. You gave your division rival your quarterback that got you to 2 NFC championship games.
Exactly.
You got nothing in return. You need to go. You're the problem. You
chose not to play Trey Lance as a rookie, and then you chose to just go all in with like no freaking data in the second year. I mean, you were like and it didn't work out. I mean, I think they realized that that's possible. It's an unknown, and they got to protect themselves from that. So Jimmy Garoppolo is their safety net. As long as he's on the roster, they can go back to him and say, well, at least we'll get to the playoffs. At least we'll get to the playoffs.
And let's be honest, the cap is everybody in the league, you, me, and everybody else, and all the teams, they all know the same thing. The cap's going up, and it's going up dramatically. So really, there's going to be room to keep rolling things back. It's just a matter of how do you want to structure things. So it's not the right time to be like panicked on the cap when you can see that the revenues in the league are going up and the cap's going to go up.
Yeah. Let's take a couple of questions. George says the Niners will not be smart to keep Jimmy Garoppolo in training camp. Trey Lance will beat him out in training camp. I can bet on that. He beat him out last year. If they don't want embarrassment, be smart. Well, should we talk about the potential risks of this quarterback competition that the Niners say they're perfectly okay with having?
Absolutely, because there was no doubt. If you watch the Montana Young doc, history has a tendency to repeat itself. One of the most interesting conversations was who was it that came to Walsh and basically said, you know what? I think it was Holmgren. You need to decide on this quarterback situation. You got to pick a guy. I think it was the 88 season. And he said, all right, I'm going to go with Joe. They went with Joe. They had this great second half run. And, you can't have two quarterbacks. You can't have two leaders. It just begs to divide the room.
Yes. So there's like, that's clear. Just the dividing the locker room, all the drama and the politics. But like, let's just talk practical. The 49ers are hoping to trade Jimmy. That's what they want. They don't want him to win this competition. They want him to play a couple preseason games if people want to see a showcase and then trade him. But like, to a team that has a quarterback who gets hurt, right? They're hoping all this stuff happens. Well, honestly, which starting quarterback in the NFL is most likely to get hurt in training camp this year?
Might be Trey Lance
or Jimmy.
or Jimmy. Yeah.
I mean, really. And here's the thing. Let's say he's losing this quarterback. Let's say he gets hurt. They can't cut him. They have to keep him, and his money becomes guaranteed for the entire year. So let's say it's looking like, hey, he's losing this competition. He knows it. They're going to cut you and re-sign you and try to restructure your deal. He could be like, you know what? I re-aggravated my thumb. I got to get thumb surgery. I never got thumb surgery because I wanted to be ready for training camp, but I re-aggravated it trying so hard. Now I'm getting thumb surgery. I mean, I don't know what Jimmy Garoppolo and Don Yee could do, but it seems like they're just not going to let themselves go down without a fight on this one. I'd be very, very careful bringing him to camp because one slip, one setback, and now you got to give him $27 million to be on IR all year.
Yeah,
that's
and that's your cap problem, and that's a cut and dried problem. And I agree, that's one of many reasons why you don't want him in camp, and you definitely don't want him on the field in camp. But the other bigger problem is, what if he stays healthy, and what if all of a sudden, it's kind of 50-50? And then, Trey has good days and Trey has bad days, and Trey makes mistakes and Jimmy makes mistakes and Jimmy has good days. Suddenly this is like this murky evaluation of who's actually the better quarterback. And then it's like, well, one guy's already we're going down the same road. And then every single guy in an open locker room. And by the way, I saw that it was going to be open this year. I'm very happy about that. Every single guy at their locker every day. What do you think? Trey or Jimmy? What do you think? Yep. They don't want that. And that takes on a life of its own. I can't imagine they want that.
Okay, so there's the possibility that it's close in training camp in this competition and the locker room just says stick with Jimmy.
Right.
Okay, let's say Trey Lance wins the competition, though. Let's say Trey Lance gets the job. This is a contract year for Jimmy Garoppolo. He loves making money. He wants to continue playing. You think he's just going to accept being a backup in his contract year so that when he hits free agency, he can ask for $10 million? Like, no. I think I would be a malcontent. I'd be whining and complaining silently, privately. But like, George Kittle, man, I'm way better than this guy. He missed you. You were open. He doesn't even look here. I would have thrown it to Debo. I would have thrown it to, really? Joe Montana never had to be Steve's backup when Joe was healthy. Joe was out for a couple of years with an elbow injury, but what do you think Joe would have said if they'd kept him in 94 and 95 when he was in Kansas City? Hey, be Steve's backup. Be a team player, Joe. I don't think so.
Yeah.
That's rich.
Garoppolo's not Joe, but I hear you. Joe, I guess, was healthy a little bit. Right at the end
very
before
end
they traded him.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. And
that was the year that Steve Young won the MVP. I was full.
Yeah, Steve Young was the best quarterback in the game at that point. But it's interesting, in the documentary, Joe said, I was still the better quarterback.
We'll talk about
Joe.
Joe. I know you're watching. We're gonna get to you. All right. So are there any other? Just the idea of him being subversive, and even as a back, is he supposed to help Trey? This is a contract year for Jimmy. Jimmy is doing a lot of things for Jimmy right now. I wouldn't trust it. To me, you have layers of distractions. Yes.
Then think about it. The trade deadline's in October. So that whole first part of the year is going to be about, did you win? Did you lose? Oh, and are you going to trade Jimmy by the deadline? Mm-hmm. Are you going to trade Jimmy by the deadline? And then what if there's an injury involved and then this becomes a huge life of its own it's not even a subplot. It becomes like the primary plot. So I don't believe that. So basically, they're playing a bluff game, and everybody knows it. It's just a matter of, does somebody get hurt, or does an opening happen between now and the beginning of camp? But then if you cut them at the beginning of camp, there could be 10 or 12 key players in your team that look at that as an aggressive move, and now you're risking your chemistry. So I don't know what they're going to do. It sounds like he's coming back for a whole nother year.
It sounds like that, and it sounds like the Niners are banking on the strength of their locker room and the tight-knittedness of I don't know. They think they're a family, and they think they can deal with something like this. I think they're dreaming. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a good guy, but any human in his situation would probably be pretty pissed. Joe Montana, you, me. Are you kidding? He sincerely believes he's better than Trey Lance. He might be, but we don't even know what Trey Lance can do. And think about it this way. What if Trey Lance loses week 1? He wins the job, loses week 1. Jimmy on the sideline smiling, doing that smile. Probably some people on the team be like, are we doing the right? Do we trust Kyle on this? What are we doing? There's a lot of pressure on Trey. Jimmy started 2-4 last year. Would Trey get that would he be allowed to do that with Jimmy Garoppolo on the team? I don't even know. Probably
I mean,
not.
Steve Young played exceptional football when he got a chance to play,
Yes.
but Steve Young was a veteran NFL player who
31.
had been in the system for years at that point.
Decade. Yes.
You know what I mean? Yes. So, I mean, this is not the same thing. This is a kid who's he's going to, there's mistakes to be made with this kid. So, you know, is it going to be best for if he's always looking over his shoulder at Jimmy? I mean, I don't think that's a good situation. So I can't believe they're really going to keep him, but I can't believe it's either points to they're going to keep him the full year. And the one interesting thing is that Trey and Jimmy get along. So I don't think that the issue will be between them. It's going to be the constant distraction and barrage of questions for the players and everybody, the constant theme of who's the leader in the room.
That's what I wanted to say. And like Trey can't be the leader of this team until Jimmy's gone. Jimmy's too well.
I agree.
As long as Jimmy's in this locker room, Trey can't lead it. It's like keeping Buster Posey. Like if he hadn't retired and making Joey Bart the starter and the captain, it's like making Posey like the backup bullpen catcher. No one in the locker room would go for that. You can't do that to him. That was a terrible analogy. Anyway, let's keep going.
I mean, Jimmy's played, has gone through too many things with too many guys in that room to just replace him in name and not let it be a competition. So then what, you can have an open competition. Then we're going to sit there and, people are going to put their charts out every day on who charted the best. I can't go through
misinformation left and right. Some people are going to get their hopes up on. Obviously, it'll be a complete freaking circus. Every day you're going to hear about the completion percentage of this guy and that guy. Plus, right. Reps. Trey Lance could have had the whole training camp. Now he'll have half the reps. Like that's exactly what he needs, a partial training camp. I don't like it at all.
No.
I don't like it at all. No. Brian says, been saying it for over a year. Jimmy's lazy. Consider doesn't work in the offseason, never gets better, smiles after interceptions. And the coup de grace was his surgery, not to tank the trade, but to be able to skip part of camp. Ooh. Look, that's a lot of speculation.
Yeah,
but they donated $20, so I'm going to read it again. The thing that precipitates this, I don't know if that's the right word, but that brings us on is Kyle Shanahan saying that he doesn't talk to Jimmy ever in the offseason. And people saying that he pretty much ghosts their text messages during the season. It seems like we don't know what he does in the offseason. He never really seemed to me like a student of the game. People just assumed because he was around Brady and came from New England that he was this cerebral, hardworking. I don't know, man. It seems like he isn't, is the way I see it.
Oh, my God. No. Jimmy Garoppolo, how many times are you going to watch a quarterback late in the down float a ball in the middle of the field in front of three defenders? I mean, come on. I mean, he makes mistakes over and over and over again. I think if Kyle Shanahan, this is all my reading into it, I've got no sources, but I think Kyle Shanahan gets frustrated by sometimes how limited Garoppolo is and how he processes the game offensively.
Yeah, and seems to be totally content with where he's at. Nathan says, I want Jimmy on Seattle. Hell, throw two picks to Fred Warner. Both
That's the thing. There's two ways to look at it, right?
I would have to think Seattle knows well enough not to bring him on, although Drew Lock isn't exactly great. Daniel says, can they wait till Jimmy passes a physical in June, July, and save the 7.5 injury provision, or is there a date his contract becomes fully guaranteed? It becomes fully guaranteed week 1 if he's still on the team. Week 1. I don't think they have the guts to cut him. If they do, I'll give him a standing ovation. They could definitely cut him. They could cut him today and get that money back when he signs somewhere else. They could.
What's the room going to be like if they cut him? What's the reaction in the room of the Kittles and the veterans in the room if they cut him first day of camp or the day before the first day of camp? I don't think they just sit there and, well, all right, it's time for Trey. I think there's pushback. I think there's people that are like, man, they screwed this guy. And look what he did for you. Look what you did to him. I could see a lot of that kind of dialogue.
Well, I think they all expected Jimmy to be gone by now. Like Jimmy said goodbye. Jimmy told him, I'm trying to get out of here. I think they expected this to be done by now. I think they're a little confused that it's still going on. And I don't know. I guess they would actually, if they cut him, I think a lot of them would be like, good, let Jimmy go. Jimmy doesn't need to be like held hostage. I think they would almost see it as like doing a solid for a player as opposed to like holding out for a 3rd round pick. If he has to be a backup for all year, I feel like Kittle would think that's messed up. Why are you doing that to him? Can't you just let him go? I mean, sure, he gets $27 million, but he wants to play. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, they're denying. I mean, the players might look at it as, hey, you're denying a football player just a right to play the game.
Yeah,
You could
why?
simplify it.
Cut him out. You don't want to use it. We want to use Trey. Fine. We're all like, we're on board. We trust Kyle, but like this seems gratuitous and over the top and almost petty and spiteful. Like some people might think he screwed the Niners getting the surgery when he did. Other people might say, hey man, he played hurt. You could have went to Trey week 17, right? He played hurt for you. Didn't play well in the playoffs, but at least, I mean, he could have shut it down. Didn't. And now you're mad that he has surgery? Like, geez, aren't you kind of having it both ways?
To me, they're in the danger zone, Grant, if they get beyond the draft and he's still here. If they moved him on draft day and some deal, this guy's there, they want to maneuver, whatever. That to me, the whole temperature in the room is going to escalate dramatically if he's still on this roster after the draft. Because there is, as we just kind of laid it out there is no subtle way to remove him from the roster on, in July. There's just not. You could trade him at that point. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that the locker room could view this. They don't want him in July, but if I could see them moving him on draft day.
That would be great. I think Ricky brings up best case scenario for the 49ers. Panthers GM said they need a quarterback, but don't want to reach for one. They also said that they might draft an edge because Brian Burns is coming up for a payday. Any chance Jimmy plus a couple of picks for Brian Burns? What picks?
Yeah, you just trade. Well, the Niners do have a bunch of day 2 and day 3 picks.
Yeah.
But
Brian Burns is an elite player.
I mean, I can't imagine you're getting Brian Burns.
No, the way I interpret this is the Panthers are going to draft a quarterback. They're just not going to like trade up for one. They'll just let one come to them eventually in round 1 or 2 or 3. That's what I would think. And he'll compete.
And also, there is no deal. This deal is going to be one of two things. It's either going to be, they acquire Jimmy and they move Darnold. There's no way they have Jimmy and Darnold. So they can't have Jimmy and Darnold.
And there's no way the Niners would want $18 million Sam Darnold. I mean, that would defeat the whole purpose of getting rid of Jimmy.
And the only way that's happening is if somehow Carolina is going to sweeten that deal in a major way. And they could if they wanted to. But to me, I don't, you have Sam Darnold. You don't believe in him. You believe that much more in Jimmy Garoppolo. Is Jimmy Garoppolo that much great of a step up from Sam Darnold? I mean, he's better. I think we'd all agree, but how much better? Is he worth giving up a first-round pick to move off of Sam Darnold? I don't know. Maybe he is if Matt Rule's going to lose his job. I don't know the scenario there in Carolina, but they seem to be the only option left.
And I don't think it's a real option either. Ken says Jimmy not going to take a pay cut. He isn't playing backup. Look, I can't wait for this quarterback competition, Larry. Do you understand how many views practice reports are going to get and practice recaps?
It's going to be awesome.
Every day. It's a legitimate quarterback competition. Man, I think do you have any? Can you fathom how many people will be going live after practice to tell you everyone? It's going to be great. It's going to be an ultimate circus, and the Niners will bring it on themselves. Sorry.
I may buy a drone and just have it fly over practice and just film everything, honestly, and then just maybe even edit it for me as well.
If the Niners were smart, they would broadcast it themselves. They could sell so much, ad revenue on it. But no, I'll take the money. Thank you. You don't. I'll just tell people what happened.
Seriously.
Daniel says Grant referred to Jimmy being the Monte Ellis to Lance being Curry and moving on from Jimmy. Don't do that to Monte. He had way more game than Jimmy. What do you think of my analogy there?
I agree. Monte had more game than Jimmy. I
didn't. He messed up his ankle though, right off the bat. As soon as he got paid.
He did.
And I loved Monte Ellis. That was back when I was a fan. Salah says, if we don't trade Jimmy before the draft, how do we sign all our draft picks? We're $1.5 million under the cap. Do we restructure more vets? Yeah, structure more vets. Straight up.
You just answered your own question there, right? I don't know who exactly. I mean, who's left to be restructured, but typically you can make. How much money do you need to sign your picks? I guess it depends on exactly how many picks you wind up with.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to the show. We'll answer some more questions in a bit.
All right, let's get to a couple of these other topics that we're talking about. Okay, this one's good, and this was one that you kind of threw out. Does Kyle Shanahan like Trey Lance more than he trusts Trey Lance? Kyle Shanahan was pictured with Trey Lance this week, and it looked like they were hanging out and having a good time. So he clearly likes him, and he seems like Trey's an easygoing guy, and Trey obviously seems like he's happier around Kyle than Jimmy. Sounds like he maybe takes off in the offseason and is like, you know what, Kyle, I'll see you at mini camp and not before. So I think Kyle does like Trey, but I kind of agree that, Kyle's an impatient guy. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy who wants to coach up a young quarterback. And nobody needs more coaching up than an FCS kid with limited reps.
Yeah, I mean, I think he loves – I think he was the driving force of bringing Trey on the team. I think he loves the idea of Trey Lance, and everything that he liked about him is still there. Like, he's a grinder. He loves football. He wants to talk about football. He stays in contact. He goes to throwing camps. I mean, he does all the little things that Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't seem to do. Yeah. And I think that's Kyle's kind of guy. You know, he's obsessed. Also a great athlete. Also, like, everything Kyle thinks he wants. But he's not a finished product yet. And Kyle knows, as we said earlier, that nothing puts his job in jeopardy quicker than going to Trey Lance and Lance not being good for whatever reason. And I think he's just not willing to take a leap of faith for whatever reason. So he likes Lance. He let out that nugget that he talks to Lance and he doesn't talk to Jimmy. But at the same time, you haven't cut Jimmy yet. So I feel like Jimmy's like it's like his emotional security blanket. It's like he needs Jimmy, even though he thinks he doesn't, even though he thinks he's beyond Jimmy. He just still hasn't been willing to put it down and move on, even though he really, really, really wants to. And I think he's trying to talk himself into it.
I think Kyle's an awesome play caller who is a totally unproven entity as a, play quarterback developer.
Right.
He's not Holmgren. He's not Walsh. He's an incredible play sequencer and play caller and play designer. Mm-hmm. He's ruthless in his play calling. He'll target your defensive weakness and exploit it, but can he bring the quarterback along? I mean, I think it's gonna be interesting.
Could his dad? Neither one did it.
That's a great. Seriously, neither have ever really developed a young quarterback. And Kyle Shanahan, the general manager, the guy with the final word on the personnel, really called the bluff of Kyle Shanahan, the head coach, with this draft choice. This guy needs to be developed, and now Kyle's on to his second quarterback coach trying to develop him. And I thought the most interesting part of the conversation this week from the owners' meeting was Kyle on Greasy kept talking about Lance. So obviously Lance is the guy. He's the guy. That's what they're focused on. But he likes the idea of Greasy, a guy who's been there, done that, and doesn't have theoretical knowledge like he does and like some other people might. And he wants real life experience that he can share with this kid. And after hearing that, Grant, I think that was a good hire.
Yeah, look, when I heard that, my reaction was, so who was Scangarello here for then?
Right.
If Greasy's here for Trey specifically, good. What the hell was last year all about? Was that a wasted year? Because that guy's gone. So whatever Rich Scangarello was teaching Trey Lance, now irrelevant. Forget that. You're on to quarterback coach number 2. It's really too bad the Niners did what they did last year. We can talk about that in a minute. But I just feel like, great. You got to the right quarterback coach in year 2. Well, better late than never.
Yeah.
Better late than never.
I do think that Greasy, it wasn't just play calling and footwork and that kind of thing. He was talking about, off field life. So he kind of knows that this kid needs some, somebody who's been through it in every way imaginable. And the one thing Greasy can say that Scangarello can't say is, hey man, I took snaps in the NFL. I did the job. I've sat there as the Larry Krugers and the Grant Cohns of the world grilled me afterwards and blah, blah, blah. And, I faced the music, so you know what I'm saying? I mean, there's more to life to being quarterback in the NFL than just, formations.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Greasy and Kyle Shanahan have something in common. Probably when they talked to each other, they realized we were tutored by the same person. We have the same exact sensibility. We were raised in the image of Mike Shanahan. It must be comforting to talk the same exact language. Probably Kyle has known Greasy since Kyle was 17.
Yeah.
16.
And I think Kyle made a good point. It's hard to find guys who have done the job and are willing to do the work. I mean, nobody wants it, and think about it. NFL quarterbacks are the ones who have done the job. Most of them made too damn much money to ever consider being a quarterback coach. So we're at an interesting point in history that this guy Greasy is even willing to do this job, considering what it pays and the hours that are attached.
The last thing I want to say about this, I know Kyle Shanahan likes the person, the worker, the athlete. I hope he's not trying to turn him into Brian Greasy, though. Like, I'm just saying, I watched Brian Greasy, and Kyle had the reputation of always wanting the pocket passer. With Trey, you're trying to have him find a balance between staying in the pocket and extending plays, because good things happen when you extend plays. And Jimmy couldn't do that. And Trey theoretically can. You don't want him to be a robot. And I feel like with Kaepernick, the Niners try to turn him into a robot, which was like defeats the purpose of having a quarterback like that. So one thing I want to say with Greasy, don't turn him into you, please.
I would say that what they like about Trey is that they've seen that the defensive linemen and the guys who are rushing the quarterback are smaller and faster than ever. There's more sacks from the secondary than ever before, year after year after year.
Good point.
The pressure packages are coming with smaller, faster, athletic guys. So being a pocket player, you still need durability and mobility within that pocket. And Garoppolo and many guys like him don't have that mobility. So they're dinosaurs. Where a guy like Lance, even a guy like Zach Wilson, he's got quick movement ability within the pocket. I think that's kind of the new thing that they're looking for.
No question. And what I like about Lance more than Zach Wilson or Kyler Murray is he has that short area quickness. He's really quick on his feet.
Yeah.
6'4", 230.
Yeah.
I mean, he's almost like a little bit like a young Roethlisberger where if you don't hit him square, he will shrug off the tackle and get away. He really seems like he can avoid sacks, which is quite a nice ability. I like that because Jimmy can't.
Mahomes, I mean, it's like Mahomes. I mean, Mahomes, he'll break free. There'll even be an avenue. He won't take it because he knows his real danger is with that arm. And I think Trey is the same thing. He's going to bust through the pocket. He's going to sprint to the open space, and then he's going to be sitting there just taking dead aim on Debo and Ayuk with a rocket of an arm. I think it's going to be a lot of good things are coming for him, I think.
All right, I got a question for you. Just a few months ago when the Niners were in the NFC Championship game, they were really doing victory laps on their whole plan. You know, people questioned keeping Jimmy Garoppolo and sitting Trey Lance a year, and they were like, see, it worked out. We have a Super Bowl run. Everyone thinks Jimmy's great. It was the right thing to do. And then cut to now. They couldn't trade him. Still on the team, and it's looking like he might be the freaking backup quarterback this year. So I know it seems beside the point. We're going back before we go forward, but I just want to go back one more time. Should the 49ers have traded Jimmy Garoppolo last year, like as soon as they got in Trey Lance? What do you think?
That one's tough because, only the Niners in their first conversations with Trey would know exactly where on the development road he began. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that answer. If I knew definitively, Grant, this guy didn't know this, he didn't know that. There's some basics. I don't know if it had to be Jimmy, but they had to have somebody else. And I really believe my buddy Tony Pauline. Tony Pauline says that they were all in on the red rifle, Andy Dalton, and that the Dalton was coming here, and that the Bears just outbid him. He decided to go to Chicago. If they had the red rifle, I think they trade Jimmy Garoppolo. They go with Dalton. They bring Lance along a little quicker than they did. Yeah. And I think that's the move that they wanted to make. And when Dalton said, you know what, I'm going to Chicago, they're going to let me start, I think they had no other move to pivot off of too.
That would have been great because it would have been fair to make Trey Lance compete with someone else who's a veteran, who's had experience, but didn't have the locker room in their back pocket. I mean, How could Trey Lance really take the team away from Jimmy Garoppolo? Like, he has BFFs in that locker room. It wasn't going to happen. So yeah, get rid of him. It always killed me how people say, oh, well, Trey's not ready here. He makes a rookie mistake here. Fine. We're talking about Jimmy Garoppolo. Right. He makes rookie mistakes. He throws to linebackers every day in practice, in games. Like he does the same mistakes every freaking game. So it's like, that's why I felt that there was actually a discussion. Should a Super Bowl contender start a rookie quarterback? I mean, the veteran plays like a rookie. So what's the difference? That's the way I looked at it. And if they had started, like really, they thought that the right reason to start Jimmy was for two reasons. One, they'd win a Super Bowl, or they'd do well enough that they could trade Jimmy, that his trade value would go up. It was reported they could have got a second-round pick for him last year. It didn't go up. What happened was he got hurt again. I mean, come on. He got hurt again. It didn't work. I'm thinking in retrospect, and it's not like 2020 hindsight. A lot of people raise their eyebrows and you're like, hold on. You just moved up this far for this guy, but you don't want to make what? So I don't know.
They feel vindicated because they got a couple playoff wins out of it and they extended their season. But let's ask the next question, which is probably, I think, connected to it. If Trey Lance had played last year instead of doing what he did, would he be further along, or would he not be as far along as he is right now? And I don't think there's any doubt he would have been further along. So,
No.
so you traded furthering Trey Lance's development over a couple of playoff wins and a chance with Jimmy Garoppolo. And ultimately, he showed you against the Rams what you already knew when he played against Kansas City in 2019. So I don't fault him for it because I don't know where on the development path Trey really was at the beginning of the year. But I'll say this, just watching Trey develop from game 1 to game 2, I think he would have been a lot further along to what he's going to be next year if he had gotten 6 or 7 starts this year or more instead of the 2.
Yeah, we've talked about it the last couple of times, but it just shows the difference between Jed and his uncle and Al Davis, that Jed looks at a couple of playoff wins as a success. And Eddie and Al Davis probably wouldn't. So they're looking at this, worked out fine. From Jed's perspective, it worked out so fine that they're willing to do it another year, apparently, just in case.
Well, Jed's perspective is also tied to the fact that he's had years where people are like, what are you going to do with Jim Tom Sula? What are you going to do with Chip Kelly? How many coaching staffs? How many coaching staffs are you going to pay off?
Yeah.
What are you paying right now and in total to pay off all these assistant coaches? I mean, he's cut the check repeatedly to clean these regimes out and go in a new direction. So I won't call him cheap. He'll spend his money. But as far as the sprint, the Rams showed how you got to win it. You got to sprint towards it. That's how the Niners won the last time they won in '94. And that's how you win in the NFL. You got to sprint towards that outcome. And this year, I want to say they ran hard, but the Rams sprinted.
Absolutely. Cleveland Browns sprinted. Chargers sprinted. John Snow 650 says, if Lance can't beat out Jimmy G, then why trade 3 first-round picks for him? The Niners are wasting a Super Bowl roster on a regressing quarterback and a rookie quarterback. That's a fair point too. What are we to think about Trey Lance if he can't beat out Jimmy, who everyone knows exactly what he is, even his biggest fans?
And that's this year. Now, last year, I don't know, but this year, absolutely, I agree. If he can't beat him out, what's he there for?
Last year, there wasn't technically a competition. Trey Lance might have gotten 5% of the first team reps. This year, it sounds like they're going to actually split it, which just sounds so juicy. I can't wait. George says, if the entire NFL did not want you, that is a red flag. The Niners should cut their losses and release him before they deal with embarrassment. Trey Lance is going to win this quarterback competition. I agree with all that, George. I agree. But
enough wondering about his value. The NFL teams in the league defined his value for us, and it's very, very clear. The verdict is in. But the Niners are waiting for, they think they got a puncher's chance of trading him. And because they don't have to trade him today, they're just kicking the can down the road to camp. But I think that's dangerous because I think there could be some guys who don't like the way you've handled Jimmy if you cut him at the beginning of camp.
I'm on mute. Hang.
There you go.
Yeah, you're right.
I
Sorry
can hear
about
you
that.
now.
Was it my fault that I was muted?
I think so. I didn't touch anything. I was
Is that why you left? Because you thought something was wrong with you?
Yeah.
That's so funny. I was muted.
Sorry about that.
That was my fault. Because there's like
you started talking
discussion outside. I'm like, oh man, I got to turn that off, and I forgot to turn it back on. This is the best show. I said this was the best show on Wednesdays at 3. I meant it because stuff like that happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, I just answered a bunch of people's stuff without actually saying anything. Anyway, I guess I'll go back.
Yeah,
I'll go back eventually. Here, why don't we get back to the show now that we have sound again?
Yes.
Let's talk about what Jed York said today or recently. He said it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's so unbelievable. Go ahead, lay it out there.
He said it's cool that it's cool that the Niners are keeping Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance, and it's a good thing because, it's a lot like when the Niners had Montana and Young, and if it worked for Eddie, why couldn't it work now? What do you think of that?
Well, first of all, you're talking about 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and you're comparing him to a guy that the league just told you has no value to speak of, and a kid who was at the FCS level who's made 2 NFL starts. And we're comparing them to Montana and Young. I just, I always say a dangerous comparison, but I think there's something should be learned from Montana and Young. And that is that Walsh, when he actually considered Young and Montana in 88, his own offensive coordinator came to him halfway through the year and said, you know what, the locker room's divided and we can't win unless you decide on a quarterback. And he said, I'm deciding on Joe. So, I think there should be something learned from that whole experience with Joe and Steve, but I don't know if it's an exact comparison.
First of all, Jimmy Garoppolo is not Joe Montana. Like that, and Trey Lance isn't Steve Young. They were choosing between Hall of Fame quarterbacks in their prime. Like Steve was in his late 20s, Joe was in his early 30s. This was a very hard decision for them to make. This is way different. Jimmy Garoppolo is a placeholder. No one looks at him as more than a placeholder. He could be out of the league in a few years if he doesn't want to be a backup. And Trey, he could be a flat out bust. We have no idea what Trey Lance is going to be. So the idea that to put either one in that sentence is silly. I don't think Jed should have even invoked this at all. But of course, it's the kind of thing that he would do.
Yeah. I mean, he's, and not to mention your backup, your lesser quarterback, in my opinion, is Jimmy Garoppolo. He's making $25 million.
Yeah.
So you've got that is in the equation as well. And then you've got a young quarterback that who knows what he is. He could be great. He could be terrible. We don't know. He hasn't played.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's the other thing, like I was really young, but I went back and read the Wikipedia pages. So I know like Steve Young never had to deal with a full season of healthy Joe Montana just sitting there critiquing him as the backup. Joe was the starter until he hurt his elbow. Then Steve Young replaced him and was the freaking MVP of the league in 92. The team went 14-2. Joe finally came back and was like, oh, I can play. Too late. Goodbye. And it's not exactly what's happened in this scenario. It's not like Steve got the job and had to have Joe nitpick him before Steve had been an MVP. At that point, Steve had his own resume, his own stripes. Trey doesn't have that.
No. Joe had set the standard. Steve was playing to that standard. Joe was still in the locker room, but Joe wasn't able to play. So he was allowed to. Steve Young was ready to play at that point. Steve Young was in the prime of his career at that point, athletically. So he was ready. He was totally ready. He was a veteran seasoned quarterback by comparison to Trey Lance. Trey is trying to just establish himself and try to establish himself as the leader in the room. And then the somewhat popular leader of the room from the previous season sitting right behind him. I mean, that's just begging for trouble. And I can't imagine they're really going to go that far with that.
Okay, quick tangent, and then we're going to get off the quarterbacks entirely. Okay. So Joe Montana recently had a documentary where he was saying that the Niners should have stuck with him in 92, 93, 94. They would have won more Super Bowls. What do you think?
Steve Young's a friend of mine, but that aside, I think Joe's got a point. I think Joe, it was his job. And, I think that, I think the 49ers would have beaten the Cowboys in the 92 NFC Championship game with Joe Montana. And he was there on the sidelines, healthy and ready to play. And they didn't play him. I don't think they would have beaten the Cowboys in 93. They did beat the Cowboys in 94. I agree with Joe. I think he would have won that game as well. So I do agree with Joe. I think he would have won 2 in that window, and Steve won 1. But that's just my opinion. And obviously, they were both great. And I love Steve. Steve, if you're watching this, I love you, brother. I love you.
See, I was 3 or 4 years old back then. So you're telling me that in '92 there was a large contingent of Niner fans, media people that thought that even though Steve had just won the MVP and gone 14-2, that they should go back to Joe Montana in the playoff. That was a thing? That's crazy.
Joe Montana played the second half of the Lions game and had like multiple touchdown passes in that game. And people were like, hey, play Joe. Play Joe.
Wow, that's interesting.
So they traded him in '93 to the Kansas City. And then, Joe beat Steve in the '93 season in week 2 in Kansas City. And then Steve won the Super Bowl, took it to an incredible level. And Joe went on and played very well with Kansas City, almost got them over the top.
Well, real quick, again, I was really young, but I'm just looking back. In '93, this is when Joe could have returned and been a full-time starter for the 49ers. He was 37.
Right.
And he played 11 games that year.
Steve Young was 32, I think.
Yeah, he was breaking down. In '93, Steve Young finished second in the MVP voting. And then in '94, he was number 1. So it's hard to say the Niners made the wrong decision. Like, that was Steve's prime. '92 to '94, he was the best quarterback in the world in those 3 years. I don't know. I'm a Steve Young fan, though, too. He gave me his autograph when I was 7. That's it. Joe never gave me his autograph.
The one thing that's consistent with this is that both instances, then and now, the 49ers went with the quarterback with a greater future.
Yes.
They think, obviously Trey's got a greater future than Jimmy. Steve had a greater future than Joe at that time. They went with the greater future. But even George Seifert, when he was asked about it, he's like, well, did we make the right call? I don't know. Would we have won more? I don't know. So they just did what they thought they wanted to do. But I think Seifert was really looked bad in that documentary. I'm not saying Scottie Pippen bad, but he looked bad.
So Joe, that's Joe's documentary. So Joe still has an axe to grind against George Seifert.
Absolutely.
Grow up, Joe. Everyone says he's the greatest quarterback of all time. What more do you want? You want to rewrite history from 30 years? That's petty. They made the right call. Deal with it, Joe.
Yeah.
We got to get the Steve Young documentary so we can hear how petty Joe Montana was when Steve was the back. I'd love it, although Steve won't go there, will he?
No, Steve's too classy, man. He's not going there. He's not going there.
Kumar says, imagine them being 2-4 next year with Trey, with Jimmy on the bench. And how is he going to be treated? Locker room will point to Jimmy. Not just the locker room, the media.
It's inviting the circus to town. Yes. Come on.
Lynch doesn't realize if he just cuts Jimmy, we can pick up people that were first rounders, and Lynch wants a first now in a second. We could have signed people that could get the job done already, have experience. Yeah, but he wants to win this. He wants to win this trade big time. It doesn't matter what they could get. When a third round comp pick is more important than $27 million in cap space, something is wrong. Something is wrong.
Well, the way they've budgeted, they feel like their cap space is spent on Debo and Bosa, and so they got their one free agent, and that's it. In their mind, even if Jimmy was traded, that money's earmarked for their own players, not new players. So all the talk about Stephon Gilmore or anybody else is just like, well, that's just talk, because they don't, in their mind, they don't have a budget for that with or without Jimmy.
LA Faithful says, do you believe if Trey plays, can Brandon Ayuk become wide receiver 1? Both have been working with each other since Trey was drafted, and they look like they trust each other, especially in that Texans game.
I do believe that. I believe even though Debo had an incredible year, and right now people would say, oh yeah, Debo's number 1. I think Ayuk's got the ability, and he's probably got a great little thing going with Trey, and I think Ayuk's going to really emerge.
I think one thing we're going to see with the way they use Trey Lance is a lot more throws to the sideline. The last 5 years with Jimmy, everything's been over the middle, because that's what he does well. And, Lance misses high. And if you miss high over the middle, that's an interception to the safety. I think it's just going to be more – you're going to see Kyle switch his play calling. He's going to throw to Ayuk around the sideline a lot. So, yeah, absolutely. It's going to be good for him. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for becoming a member. Nick says Shanahan is Ben Stiller in The Heartbreak Kid. I've never seen that movie. Have you seen that movie?
Yes. So dude, you haven't seen Heartbreak Kid? Oh no. My God, man. You got to get that one, dude. You got to watch that. It'll make you laugh.
When did that come out?
I would say over a decade
2007? Ago. Okay. All right. I'll check it out.
It's funny. It's funny.
All right. This is back. I'm muted. Thank you. I'm an idiot. Are the Niners scared if they cut Jimmy, he goes to Seattle and wins? I just don't think Seattle wants him, man. I mean, they know Jimmy for what he is, although he's beaten him. I don't know.
Oh, I mean, who's going to be their other guy then? Who's their other guy? Who's there with Drew Lock?
I would think they would draft
Jacob Eason. That's it.
Malik. They're not going to get Malik Willis. Good question, right? I don't know.
God. I mean, I was thinking maybe Mariota would go there, but Mariota didn't go there. He wound up.
I thought they were going to get Baker. Does Baker not want to go there?
You know what? To me, that's the interesting wrinkle in this whole Jimmy thing is how's the Baker situation going to play out? Because he seems adamant about not wanting to be in Cleveland, and they have to have an NFL quarterback because Watson's going to be suspended.
So that's why they're not trading Baker, because they actually need him.
They need Baker.
They're like, you know what? Be a grown-up, Baker, and play football. You signed a contract. I like that.
They're going to force him to play the first 6 games and then bench him mid-season. Come on, that's why I was thinking Baker and Jimmy.
Yes.
Grant, because think about it. They flipped Baker for Jimmy. The Niners can treat Baker totally different than Jimmy because Baker there's no allegiance to Baker in that room. So they can do whatever they want.
But Baker,
they get to hit restart, and the Browns get to hit restart as well in their locker room because you know that they're going to be benching Baker for Watson. What if Baker played killer football? What if he played great football?
Baker being a whiner on the bench because he can't play. Same thing. It's contract year. I'm better than Trey. Why can't I play? You want someone like Andy Dalton to back up, not Nate Sudfeld. Andy Dalton, someone who doesn't even aspire to start, or Colt McCoy, someone who knows his role. I don't think Baker knows his role at this point. Neither does Jimmy.
What did you think of the talk this week? Oh, go ahead. You don't want to read one there?
Go ahead. We can
I was going to say, what do you think of the talk this week about the fact that the Jets and Joe Douglas are trying to keep an eye on all the top receivers, including Deebo Samuel? Would you trade Deebo Samuel for what the Miami Dolphins just got for Tyreek Hill? 5 picks, including 1.
I wouldn't. I'm tempted. I would trade Kittle, but I think there's a difference trading 28-year-old Tyreek Hill, whose game is all built on speed, and that speed could go this year, next year, the year after that. Trading 26-year-old Deebo. I mean, it seems like Deebo could have two more elite years left in him. And if you trade him for picks, you're not that good at drafting. I mean,
I know.
You know what I mean? Like, nah, I think I might trade Deebo in a couple years, but not now. Like, he's the best player in the league. I think now's a good time I think the question with Deebo is not, do you trade him, but what do you pay him? Because, he's
paying him a ton.
You're paying him a ton, but at the same time, you're playing him at running back. So what are you expecting to happen? You could give him $30 million, but you play him at running back. What's he going to be when he's 29? Is he going to be in the league when he's 31? Is it worth a long-term investment if you're going to play him like he's Le'Veon Bell? That's my question. So you could go year to year. You could franchise tag him. You could not give him a 5-year extension, but they're going to. And that, to me, makes me a little nervous. It's like he's had injury issues. He pulls groins, hamstrings, and he's playing running back at least half the time. Good luck.
I know. It's really it's even more so than, it's even a bigger question to ponder because he's a wide receiver that you use as a running back in short yardage and goal line situations.
Yes.
And now you're talking about paying him a ton of cash long-term, like a commensurate with the top wide receivers in the sport, but you're going to use them like the Niners of the 80s used Tom Rathman.
Yes.
I mean,
yes. Absolutely. I mean, Craig, from the first Rams game
that's a gamble.
He was getting 5 carries, 5 catches a game. Like, he could last a while like that, but it seems like most running backs break down after 2-3 years.
I'd be nervous paying him because of the soft tissue injuries he's had going back to South Carolina. Awful lot of quad and hammy pulls.
So what I would do is just, go to year with him. Take it year to year. I don't see why you have to give him a 4 or 5 year deal just because he wants it.
Yeah.
I mean, what's he going to do? Hold out? Who was the last player who held out?
No, it's you just don't do it anymore. Yeah.
It's way too expensive. You don't get your money. It used to be they'd fine you $40,000 a day. And then when you came back, the team would sort of wink, give the money back to you like, hey, here's a signing bonus. We're all good. First of all, you're not allowed to do that anymore. It's against the collective bargaining agreement. And now it's $50,000 a day, I believe. So he's made $6 million in his career. That means he's pocketed $3 million after taxes and agent fees. And he has a lot of ice and a nice car. So I'm thinking he probably can't afford to take a year off football. No offense. I would have the same stuff too, but not like Jimmy Garoppolo could do something like that with $110 million.
Right.
Debo can't. Debo has to play football. So don't just bend over backwards to be nice. Sorry, it's a business. It's not a family.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree with your point more. I did a video this week on my channel on all those receivers. I mean, I looked at the list of receivers that the Niners have drafted in the last 25 years. It's a ridiculous list. I mean,
Yes,
it's failure after failure after failure, and there's only one Pro Bowler on that list, and it's Deebo Samuel. So even if you're getting 5 picks, it took you 25 picks to find 3 or 4 decent receivers and 1 Pro Bowler, but you're going to trade your Pro Bowl receiver for 5 picks and hope that you land another one. It just doesn't add up.
No, I mean, Debo is so important that I actually feel we talked last week. We were talking about, is their Super Bowl window open? I kind of want to change my answer. I almost feel like as long as they have Debo and he's 26 and he's not hurt and they keep giving him the ball, they don't like forget down the stretch in the fourth quarter, they could beat anybody. And that's what even makes it's almost like looking at what the Warriors have done the last few years. You had Draymond, Steph right at the end of their prime, and you're drafting guys who are 18. Like, what are you doing? Like, commit to your window now. Commit to Debo now, because you don't know what he'll be when he's 28. Maybe you might want to trade him when he's 28 if he's not getting 10 yards after the catch per reception. Maybe he's down like Tyreek Hill. He's a good player, right? Like, if you look closely at his stats, averaged 11 yards a catch last year, 4 yards after the catch. Maybe the Chiefs are right. Maybe the Chiefs know what they're doing.
Well, I'll say this. Yeah. Vegas agrees with you, Grant. The Niners are a Super Bowl contender right now with Lance. But, I mean, since we don't know what Lance is, like, what's the worst he could be? Then when you factor that in, is the Super Bowl window really open? To me, your Super Bowl window has to be in some way almost directly tied to your quarterback and how your quarterback's playing.
True.
And so I hear what you're saying. I agree with you that Debo's the most important offensive player. Yes. But is there a window open if Debo's great and Lance is a turnover machine?
No, you're right.
No. I don't know. I got to see some baseline of Lance for I don't know how many games, but I would say 5 or 6 games. Some baseline of what the expectation of his play really is. If he had a decent baseline, I'm with you on the Debo take, but to me, I got to see that baseline of Lance before I can say Super Bowl windows open.
I guess I feel that even as bad as Jimmy Garoppolo was in the playoffs last year, they probably could have beaten the Rams in that last game if Debo had gotten the ball a couple of times in the fourth quarter.
I agree.
We'll never know. Just like you think Joe Montana would have won in 92. I guess we'll never know.
Sorry, Steve.
Kev says, sorry, Steve. Kev says Niners and SF Giants both overachieved last season. Neither made any big moves despite making deep playoff runs. Meanwhile, LA stockpiling talent. What do you think of that?
Well, as far as the Giants are concerned, I mean, yeah, Dodgers get Freddie Freeman, the Giants get Jock Peterson, and say goodbye to Posey and Solano and Chris Bryant and Gosman. And
local guy,
we'll see.
Jock Peterson.
I do love Jock Peterson.
Guy. Local guy, isn't he? Went to Palo High, no?
Yeah, Palo Alto High. Probably knew Harbaugh.
AKG says 2 of my all-time favorite hosts together. Thank you. You guys should definitely do Niners pre and post game show. Not listening to KMBR post game without LK. Oh, yeah. You already know.
Look at that. Fist in the air on that one. Fist in the air.
Absolutely. What is wrong with my freaking – all right, sorry. I'm getting tripped. Yes.
AKG,
I guarantee
thank you.
Can be doing that. I still have to do some writing. But, yeah, we'll be collaborating a lot. Don says, bottom line, can you justify holding Jimmy, not using his current $18 million cap space to meet roster needs? Can they restructure enough to meet needs? They'll say they can.
Yeah. I mean – they lost Key today, by the way, so that, they couldn't keep Key. They've taken some hits. Let's be totally honest. I mean, we'll get to it a little bit later on, but they've taken some hits in free agency.
But they really believe in their young guys. All of a sudden, Dustin says, what if Ayuk was in the doghouse because he was asking for trade to play?
Maybe.
Well, here's what I saw. We'll never know. And I don't think Kyle ever said it to anyone, including Ayuk. But you could watch on film during the preseason. They weren't linking up Ayuk and Jimmy. And whenever Jimmy would miss him, Ayuk would do the jump up and down thing that Justin Jefferson does. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're like, you messed up. It's your fault. I don't think Jimmy appreciated it, and probably the coaches didn't. They're like, dude, we like you, Ayuk, but it's your second year. He's getting 27 million. You can't do that. And I think it
Don't
was a little bit
show
like,
up your
you
quarterback.
can't show up your quarterback, man. He was doing a little bit of that.
Yeah. Well,
And yeah,
he trained with Trey in the offseason, right? He may have felt that Trey outplayed Jimmy in the preseason and in camp. He may have felt that he wasn't even that close, and that when the job went to Jimmy, he pouted a little bit. Maybe he was unprofessional. Maybe what
Possible.
Grant's talking about, he did every day in practice,
Possible.
and they talked to him about it, and he still did it. So now you're basically going against your coaches. But either way, man, no more of that. No more benching and disciplining your star receiver and star players when you're trying to make the playoffs. They almost didn't make the playoffs, and largely because of that decision.
Yes.
That little, we're going to teach Ayuk a lesson. So
I think from Ayuk's perspective, he's like, man, I'm getting open. I'm running hard. I'm running down the field. It's tiring. I keep getting open, and the guy doesn't even look at me. And so I think at the end of his routes, he would do it like, like I'm open, like, and they didn't appreciate that. So I think what he had to do was just keep getting open, put his head down, come back to. But what you saw was as soon as they said, like Jimmy said goodbye and I want to get traded or whatever, Ayuk went on Instagram, I think it was, and said, deep ball me, please. Like, yeah, man. I think he knows Jimmy's not even trying to get down the field, and Ayuk sees himself as a deep threat.
And also, let's throw this out there as well. This was one of the flaws of John Lynch's roster last year, because on this team, Ayuk ran off the coverage, and you should have somebody else run off the coverage. Go get Travis Benjamin to run off the coverage. Use Ayuk. He's your first-round receiver. They treated him like he was just some go-route space creator.
Yeah, I would have problems with that too if I were him. Official B&A Music 88 says the difference between Joe and Jimmy is that Joe got the Niners a third-round pick and a backup safety. Sorry about early works Wi-Fi time me out. It's all right. So, yeah, I forgot to even look at what the Niners got for Joe. What did they
Joe did not get a third-round pick. I think Joe fetched a first. Because that wasn't the Dana Stubblefield, Todd Kelly draft. They went back to back.
Dana Stubblefield
one of those picks. I think it was Dana Stubblefield they got.
I think you're right.
I think it was a first and a third and David Whitmore. That's what it was.
Okay. M9er says if Lynch is unable to trade Jimmy at the start of the season and they keep him and get the comp pick next year, what does Lynch's job security look like? I mean, Jed gave him his blessing.
Yeah, Lynch is set. I mean, I think Lynch is set. I think Lynch, they've already done enough in Jed's mind.
Yeah. Young John Sebastian, I can't do the rest, but I appreciate you, says Young did not cost 3 first-round picks plus 1 third-round pick, second and a fourth. 1990 NFC Championship game decided Montana's time was up in SF. That's a good little bit of a history. The Niners, I mean, Wall saw kind of an opportunity, bought low on Steve Young, who was the number 1 pick, right? He was the number 1 pick in the USFL draft. He was a big deal coming out of college.
LA Express, $40 million contract. It's an annuity, his wife said. No, but his mother said from the crowd. Yeah. No, but a second and a fourth. How about that? A second and a fourth. Walls kicked Hugh Culverhouse's pocket.
Yes, he did. AZ Gaming says, do you think RB Trey is going to be good? Trey Sermon, what do you think?
I do. I think he's going to be good. Well, I mean, first of all, I liked him with the Buckeyes. I liked him at Oklahoma. He's a pick and slide guy who needs to hit the hole harder, but he learned that lesson. Now he's going to get himself in better shape, leaner, faster, more explosive, more sudden, and you're still going to have that guy who can carry the ball a lot and run between the tackles. I like Sermon.
Dan says, Grant, will you ever appear on Rombo's show? Sure. Tell him to reach out to me. I'm down. Always want to know. Thank you. When you're in LA, you're invited to De Carne Asada. Thank you. I don't know what that is, but I'll check it out. All right, back to the show. So there are rumors. There's been rumors linking the 49ers to Saquon Barkley all off season. Don't know how legit they are. What do you think? Buy or sell these rumors that the Niners would be interested in trading for Saquon Barkley?
Well, all I know is I was sitting in the Little League park in the outfield, and I did a video on this week, and it got 13,000 views. So you know what?
Yes, there you go.
As far as I'm concerned, it's going to happen, and it's very, very, very credible. No, I don't know. It doesn't make sense really when you look at the $7.2 million cap hit for Barkley, but you can't have Jimmy Garoppolo at $25 million and then add a guy like Saquon Barkley. But if somehow you were moving Jimmy Garoppolo and you could get Saquon Barkley. I like Saquon Barkley. Why? Because the cost is going to be a 6th-round pick. It's not nobody's giving a second or a third or a fourth even for Saquon Barkley. You could get him for a 6th-round pick. Yeah. This guy, his first year in the league, had 91 receptions. That sets the NFL record. So you put him in Kyle's offense. He's only 25. Last year he had an ankle injury, which limited his games. I think Saquon Barkley is going to have 2 or 3 big years in the NFL. And there's a few backs that I can think of that are like this. Like they got hurt early and then all of a sudden they resurfaced. It's a deep running back draft, so you don't need Saquon Barkley. But man, if you could make it work on the cap, I think age 25, 26, 27, let's say you had him for 3 years, Saquon Barkley, you may get something really, really special for a 6th-round pick. So I'd have to do my due diligence in a lot of different directions as far as his knee and his ankle and his health. But yeah, I'd be interested. I know you're not. I already saw you kind of pan this idea.
It's tempting. It's tempting. He was great. I love Saquon Barkley coming out of college. I thought he was the most gifted running back I'd ever seen. I mean, Bo Jackson was before my time.
6 feet, 230, fast.
Oh my God, he moved
great hands.
He looked like bigger Barry Sanders. I love Saquon Barkley, but he's had some serious injuries. And last year he averaged 3.7 yards per carry on a terrible offense. I know.
Terrible
I just feel like running backs sort of break down after a couple of 2.5 years, and it sucks. And he's 25 and he's washed up. Maybe. I don't know. For a certain price, why not? If you get him for a 6th or 7th round,
let me throw a name to you. Let me throw a name to you that you know very, very well.
Yes.
Garrison Hurst.
I like that.
Garrison Hurst was, I think, a top 10 or maybe even top 5 back on a bad team, bad line, suddenly came to the Niners.
Yes.
Garrison Hurst, I mean, I don't have those numbers in front of me, Grant, but Garrison Hurst in the 90s was pretty badass.
He was like Frank Gore before Frank Gore. I mean, he had some seasons that were right up there with Frank's best. He was great.
Good.
He was great. And, he sort of I remember 97. Steve was a little old at that point. He'd been getting knocked around a little bit. And the reason the Niners made it so far in 97 was Garrison Hurst. And then he got hurt in the playoffs and they fell out.
He can block too. It's a great comparison to Gore because both those guys would just
I mean, if you could buy low, like the Niners did with Garrison Hurst or what they did with Steve Young, I'm into it. I just wouldn't want to don't do the Jerick McKinnon thing where you give a ton of money to a running back. It's always got to be cheap. It's always got to be in your interest. So maybe Saquon is that.
Well, how about this? What if he's 25? I believe it's the last year of his deal. What if you could take his deal? He hasn't done a whole lot. Trade a late round pick for him and then renegotiate. Give him a 3-year deal for $2 million a year instead of, or maybe less.
I got an idea.
What do you got?
How about Saquon Barkley straight up for Jimmy?
I'd do it.
Who says no? I mean, if all they're taking is a late round pick,
a quarterback.
And that's a way for the Niners to save face. Instead of taking a 6th-round pick for Jimmy, which is embarrassing, trade it for a player who also is worth nothing, but is a big name. Saquon. Right. Yeah. Trade it for Saquon.
Would you take the quarterback back? Would you take Daniel Jones?
Yeah.
Now that's interesting because Daniel Jones is very fast.
Yeah.
And he would be
I like Daniel Jones. I feel like
he's throwing a ton of picks.
He's a little bit like Alex Smith. Like, put him in a good situation and he might be okay. Better than okay.
Yeah.
Daniel Jones. Why not? Absolutely. And no one on the Niners knows who he is. He can be the backup quarterback here for a little bit. And if Trey stinks, they could go to him. I kind of like it.
Yeah.
I'm into it. Yeah. Okay. Scott says Saquon would excel in Shanny's offense being spelled by Elijah Mitchell, reduced hits for both and less injury risk. Garrison Hurst is a great example. Yeah. Also, if they wanted to trade Deebo Samuel, Saquon can do a lot of what.
How about this, Grant? I mean, Trey Lance is going to need a safety valve. I mean, is there a better potential dump off in the flat back than a guy like Saquon Barkley? Well, I don't know. Again, I don't know what Saquon Barkley's really got left.
That's my question. Saquon, Christian McCaffrey, they were both great 2 years ago. What do they have left? In theory, they're the 2 best, but I'm curious. But yeah, I like it. I just want to know what the price is.
Yeah.
Chris says, what are the chances that it's a legit quarterback competition? Jimmy's going to get the starter and Trey will get the practice squad. Yeah, I wonder, are they really going to do a quarterback competition? It seems like no one does that anymore because 1, it's a circus, and 2, reps are limited to begin with, is what I was trying to say.
Well, okay, here's the other angle we didn't really hit on this angle on this thing is what if there was I can't see Jimmy on this roster or playing at the price tag. There's no way he's going to play at that. There's no way they want him at that price tag. And now they can look him in the eye and say, hey, Don Yee, guess what? Nobody else wants you at this price tag as well. So let's drop your price tag. And then,
and then they say, guess what? Jimmy just had surgery on his thumb.
Yeah.
Now the $27 million is guaranteed. I love the Niners. I hope
that's hardball.
That's hardball right there.
Yeah.
But that's what I would do. What happened to the thumb surgery? They didn't say anything about that. It's like, hey, mess with us. Oh, yeah. Oh no! Oh, what happened? I was playing.
As I was signing the contract, I tore my thumb.
Hey, we had a quarterback competition. I had to play hard. All right. The Niners lost Arden Key. I thought he was one of their better players down the stretch in the regular season. Trent Baalke must have agreed. Trent Baalke gets the last laugh, takes away Arden Key from the Niners. Do you think this is a significant loss?
Yes, absolutely it is. Yeah. And this guy was the key to the NASCAR package. He's great on these stunts. You could line him up at tackle and stun him outside. You can line him up at end and stun him inside. His timing on it was great. That was the best pickup of last year's offseason. They got him for nothing. The Raiders, I don't know what are the Raiders doing? I mean, the Raiders
they wanted Solomon Thomas. We could have told you.
Anyway. I mean, yeah. But I mean, and they got rid of Mo Hurst for nothing as well. They still have Mo Hurst. He's pretty decent. So, I mean, Arden Key is a huge loss for the 49ers. If you had said Jordan Willis, Arden Key, you can keep one, I would have taken Key. Willis obviously was cheaper. They opted to keep Willis, but it's just another bullet in their gun up front that they lose, right? They lost Key. They lost DJ Jones. They lost Contavious Street. They're not quite as explosive and as athletic as they were just, when the season ended. So I think it's a loss. I think it really is a loss because he was one of those guys that played. If you look at his snap count, it went steadily up as the season went on. They saw his value.
And like the Niners aren't a team with two dominant edge rushers. They have Bosa, but I think what made what unlocked their pass rush the second half of the season was the fact that they could go 4 deep. They always had 4 threats on the field on fourth down, and they had reserves. Now, who's the fourth pass rusher? It's not Kinlaw. I don't think.
No, Kinlaw's not a pass rusher. He's stationary.
Kevin Givens, but it's not Kevin Givens. I mean, I think
What's the best pass rushing line they can put together right now? It's Bosa, it's Armstead, it's what Ebukam maybe,
and who?
It's not Kinlaw.
He's an edge too.
Maybe it's Givens. Maybe
it's Hurst who didn't freaking play last year.
Maybe it's Devontae Wyatt in the draft. I mean, they need I think that's one of their needs in the draft is a defensive tackle who can run.
I think edge is a need too. They got serious needs on their lines. Anyway,
they do. They're not the same team that they were at the end of the year on the line of scrimmage.
George wants to talk about Saquon again. He says, when healthy, he's my favorite back in the NFL. He's better than any back. Big, fast, powerful, can juke like crazy. Please trade him for Jimmy. I would make that trade in a heartbeat. We found a trade that fans like.
Nice.
Good.
Because they know Saquon Barkley. Yeah. His uncle's Iran Barkley, the former boxer. Great athletes in that family.
Dad, did you know that? Dad, did you know Iran Barkley? I know my dad's watching somewhere. All right, let's talk. This kills me. So everyone's concerned about what the Niners are saying with Trey Lance, how confident they are in Trey Lance. The left guard position is just like the quarterback position. You're going to move off a starter who had experience, who was a known quantity for something totally unknown, except that Aaron Banks was a second-round pick. And all of a sudden, they've changed their tune. They really have a lot of confidence in him and Jalen Moore and Javon Kinlaw too. Like, where did all this confidence come from in the last 2 months, Larry?
It's amazing. They have different levels of confidence in and out of season on these guys. So John Lynch, once people started kind of pushing back on the pick, as week after week after week went by where Banks did not see the field, late in the year, and I don't remember what week it was, maybe you do, but one of the weeks, week 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there, Lynch is like, I doubled down on Banks. Like, I still think Banks is going to be a terrific player. I don't know what exact term he used, but he basically was like, hey, this was not a bust of a pick. I believe in this guy. Guy's going to be a hell of a player. So there's either some disconnect between John Lynch in the front office and the offensive line coach, or they don't see eye to eye, or somehow Banks was not good enough to be active in his rookie year, but he's good enough to start at left guard his second year. I don't know if he's just a guy. Some guys can only play one side or the other. Maybe he only could play the left side, and so Tomlinson was there. But man, it seems like a mixed message on Banks, and Moore I thought looked good at right tackle or left tackle, I should say, in the preseason, and then couldn't get on the field for Tom Compton towards the end of the year. So I mean, we're getting mixed messages on both those guys. Kinlaw just got hurt, so we know we know that he looks great, and outside their door or whatever, but it's wait until the games start and see if that knee holds up.
Yeah, it just seems kind of funny. Like when the Niners saw themselves as a championship team, they said that over and over and over last year, right? We're a championship roster. We got 2019 vibes. We like Trey Lance, but we just can't turn over this Super Bowl team to a rookie. And that was the attitude. That's how Josh Norman started 15 games. And as a result, Aaron Banks wasn't even trusted to be a backup. He was inactive most of the year, meaning like if someone were to get hurt and he had to come in they still didn't trust him. Not for any amount of time could he be on the field. It was like, you just watch. And now, like, yeah, we feel good with him starting. So what does that say about the way you look at this season? Like, hey, are you no longer a championship team? Are you kind of saying like, hey, if Aaron Banks works out, great. If not, we'll take another crack at it next year. Like, what are they saying with all the? I don't know. I don't know what I'm asking.
Those end of the year videos where they have like, the 2014 Carolina Panthers, and they'll have some little title, the year that was. I mean, the year that was for the Niners last year is, outside of Elijah Mitchell, we don't trust the 49ers of 2021. Hell no, we don't trust our rookies. I mean, they didn't play their rookies. Trey Sermon couldn't see the field. Played pretty good against Seattle, never to be heard from again. Diamador Lenore played pretty good early on, never to be heard from again. Banks couldn't get on the field. Moore couldn't get on the field. Lance couldn't get on the field. I mean, there's more than that probably. I mean, they just did not play their rookies last year. And I don't know. I thought Jalen Moore looked good. I never saw Banks, so I can't really tell you about Banks, but I thought Jalen Moore looked like a future starter. But obviously the O-line coach didn't feel like he was ready to go. I thought Trey Sermon looked pretty good in that Seattle game. Obviously, Bobby Turner didn't agree. So, they have different standards. I'm sure they want certain things. Practice habits are important to coaches, so on and so forth. I know Bobby Turner wants running backs who will hit the hole, and maybe Sermon danced a little bit too much in the hole. I mean, I see individual reasons, but man, I mean, it seemed like a real disconnect between the personnel side of things and the coaching staff.
I got a theory. I think this has been hanging over the last couple of years, and I'm just going to say it. I think the Niners John and Kyle felt that they needed to make the playoffs last year. That missing the playoffs for a fourth time in 5 years was probably unacceptable, even though they had extensions. Like, they didn't want to tempt fate on that. And I think they felt that the purpose of Jimmy Garoppolo last year was saving everyone's job. You can't miss the playoffs again. You can't trust Jed and John and Denise. Who knows what they'll do? We got to make the playoffs. And now that they made the playoffs, they're like, start Aaron Banks. We're good. I'm signed through 2025. You're signed through 2026. Let's give Talanoa Hufanga a shot. Now there's no pressure anymore. They made the playoffs last year. No one's getting fired this year. Only way they get fired is if Trey Lance starts and goes like 1-16. That's the only way it happens.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, they were pretty tight last year. There was no question that you would never know that a couple years prior they had been in the Super Bowl. The way the tightness around the organization, they lost 4 in a row. Suddenly Dr. John's at practice, and he's walking around. So, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it was like they acted like their jobs depended on it. So maybe their jobs did.
Maybe they did. And maybe I think it's pretty clear that they're cool now. They made the NFC Championship. Jed is just gushing about how the culture and the structure and all the great people. Like, dude, they're fine. They just have to just play it conservative. Don't do too much. Don't jeopardize your own job.
Maybe I think it's 50-50 on that. I think Kyle's fine. I think Lynch is still, Peters didn't get that New York Giants offer, so he's still there. But let's just say it was like, hey, we're going to lose Peters. there's probably some people that, would rather have Peters running the show than Lynch. So, you know
And
what?
maybe if Lynch takes the L on this Jimmy Garoppolo thing, that's the ammunition that Peters has to move in. There could be reasons why John Lynch refuses to take the L on this.
Right.
Interesting.
They do seem adamant about getting value in this trade. Like that's
it's the most important thing to them.
Yeah.
It's more important than winning a Super. It's the most important. 2022, the pursuit of a third-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo. That's what it's all about.
Yes.
Crazy to me. Sacramento Mike says, who is the Niners money manager? Do a topic on him or her. We lost K1 for 2 years, $5 million, can't re-sign Keys, 5 starts, pay Jimmy Garoppolo $100 million. This is crazy. Parag. I'm going to see if I can get Parag on the show because I've said so many nice things about him throughout the years. I think he would love to come on and explain his thought process.
That should be a very popular show.
Yeah. What about picking up Calais Campbell? Says Mark.
He's timeless.
Like
he's timeless.
Yeah.
How old is he at this point? I mean, the one thing that you don't want is you don't want another run stuffer. You got run stuffers. You need more pass rushers. Think Perry and Winfrey in the draft or something like that. They need a pass rusher inside.
My dad chimes in and says, Iran Barkley KO'd Thomas Hearns. Wow.
The Hitman.
Wow. Thomas Hearns is one of my favorite boxers to watch highlights of. He was before my time, but man, that guy.
Crazy hand speed.
Iran Barkley. Wow. Okay. I got to go watch that fight. I think I'm like
his dad. Also, Saquon's dad was a boxer. His brother was drafted in baseball by the Angels. So it's a ridiculous athletic family.
Okay. Last topic. This is a draft topic. So I'm going to throw it to you. I can contribute on it too, though. I've done my research. How many picks do the Niners need? They have 9 currently. That's the first question. And how many starters do you think they need to get out of this, like year 1 starters or heavy contributors?
Okay, well, I think they need a starter at. It depends how you see the safeties. I see the safeties as Jimmy Ward switching to play up on the line of scrimmage. So I think you need a free safety who can cover starter. You need a nickel back to replace K1 unless you're going to move Mosley there. So I don't want to be one deep or have no depth. So I would say you need a nickel back, a free safety, and probably a starting defensive end opposite Nick Bosa. Maybe one offensive lineman as far as starters. So maybe a punter if you don't want to have Wishnowsky. So those you need 5 starters. I got about a dozen positions that I'd like to fill. And I mean, if you're really going to fill every spot on your team, I think there's about a dozen. So right now, and they've been good at finding guys after the draft. So it doesn't have to be 12 draft picks, but I would say you want to have 10 solid draft picks in this upcoming draft.
I agree. I think they need to trade down. I think they need more picks. They're at 61. I would trade down. And I think the most important thing is offensive line this year. I don't know what they're doing. And to me, the main reason things fell apart in 2020 was the offensive line. McGlinchey was bad. Weston Richburg wasn't there. And it was just Trent Williams and 4 guys. The Niners are this close to being Trent Williams and 4 guys. I know Alex Mack is coming back. I still want a center. Someone who could play guard for a year, then maybe replace Alex Mack. It's a complicated offense. The center has a lot to learn. I think an interior offensive lineman is extremely important. And then also, you mentioned edge, you mentioned DB, a deep threat wide receiver. They need to show, you know what I'm saying? Like, they don't have one because of Jimmy. They're like, what's the point? Well, Trey Lance needs that. That's a great way to show that you're committed to Trey Lance. Getting him a deep threat wide receiver that wouldn't be here for Jimmy.
Is Travis Benjamin not enough, or do you need something more?
Definitely not enough. I would like them to draft a wide receiver in round 3. Everyone's saying that this is a historically good wide receiver class. It's maybe there's no Jamar Chase, but it's deep. There could be 12, 13 starter. Get one of those starters. Get some dude who ran a 4.3. How about what's his name? Calvin Austin III. He ran a 4.3 too. How about that guy?
Yeah, he's tiny. He's tiny. I wouldn't mind if they went and got the kid from North Dakota State, Christian Watson. He ran 4.28 or 4.31 officially or whatever it is. Yeah, they need a vertical threat. They need a vertical threat at wide receiver. I'd like to see another dynamic running back if they don't go for a Barkley in a trade. I'd like to see another, and it's a great draft for that. And they need some edge rushers, and they need a defensive tackle who can rush. And that's a key element. And they need a couple of young players in their secondary who are not just like, special teamers, but actual starters, future starters. So, yeah. in 8 or 9, I would say right now they have 9 picks. If they could wind up with 10 to 11 picks, maybe 12, that would be ideal.
Absolutely. And I feel like they need to find a way to get another pick in day 2 or something. Like I don't think they need to necessarily pick at 61, but if they could trade down to 75 and get another pick in day 2, they need a lot of starters. And I don't know how many they're going to get on day 3. So
yeah, you can't, here's the thing about day 3 is that, there's a lot of value, but there's always a story there. Like LSU's linebacker, Damone Clark, just had a terrible injury. So he's not going to be, I think it's a foot problem. He's not going to play this year. So you're going to have to redshirt him. So that's the kind of guy that I would take on day 3, man. I mean, just some starting caliber stud linebacker who you're not going to have until late in the year or maybe next year. Go get starting talent any way you can, even if they're hurt, even if you got to be patient and wait a year.
It's interesting you bring up redshirt picks. I wouldn't be surprised if the Niners did that this year. I mean, they're basically punting. The most important thing this year is to get a pick for Jimmy next year. So why wouldn't they get a redshirt guy?
Yeah. There's a couple guys like that in this draft.
Yeah. Absolutely. People who went down their pro days. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Round 1 picks you could get on the beginning of round 4. I think the Niners will do that. Maybe they should.
One of the guys, my favorite guys in the draft they're saying falling down the board is the Iowa center Linderbaum, who's just ridiculous. He's got short arms, and short arms on centers is usually a bad thing, but they're saying he may fall into round 2. I mean, this guy's an all-world type center. I mean, this guy could be a guy that really anchors your O-line going forward.
Yeah. Well, in the next couple of weeks, we'll start doing mock drafts. It's that time, and I know Larry does his homework. Larry was a scout. Larry can go into like the undrafted free agent. So we could do
one like one of the simulators in the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be surprised.
We can debate it.
Yes, it'll be fun. So that's it for today. Actually, Cap speaking says Donovan West out of ASU would be great O-line pick, guard, center, 3rd or 4th.
I'll check him out. I haven't seen West.
Everyone, make sure you hold on. It's in the chat box. Subscribe to Larry's YouTube channel. It's in the chat. It's in the description. It's the fastest growing YouTube channel in the Bay. It's got great stuff. It's got Larry, and it's got Ben Camperman. You're on Ben's show.
I'm going on Ben's show. Do you know him?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm going on there tonight.
He was on the Kids Roundtable. Ben's great.
Man, I've been doing a lot of these shows. I've been meeting a lot of interesting people. It's been good. Yes. My Vish video was hot too, man. Dude, Vish, somehow Vish
is the GOAT.
Vish is the GOAT.
Vish is the GOAT. Larry, thanks for coming on. I look forward to this every week.
Dude, me too, dude. Have a great one.
All right, take care.